Forests are beautiful and mystical places, so much that our ancestors thought that there was little creatures that lived inside those places. These creatures came to be known as elves. At first, these little creatures were just small, but later on, as culture evolved, we had the creation of Tolkien's work of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and later became to be known as the High Elves as we know today. They evolved with us, and soon Games Workshop decided to take inspiration from them and created the High Elves for their Warhammer fantasy world. And with that also came the Wood Elves. Now, the Wood Elves are something that I really like, but after the destruction of the world that was, we have Age of Sigmar, and those Wood Elves cease to exist. Or they do, but not as before. So I decided I wanted to paint these new Wood Elves into that old style color scheme. And later on, I'll be painting exactly that same color scheme with a practically new model of a Wood Elf that came out recently. Now, when you think of a Wood Elf, you think green, brown, and golds because that is what you find in the woods. So I decided that I'm gonna go exactly for that color scheme. It's going to be lots of green, brown here now and then, and gold just to align the outlines. And so that's what I did. I will be working with a lot of glazing in this paint scheme, so it's basically how I wanted to build up those layers. I started off with very thin coats of green from my Skull Color artist range, and so I wanted to just fill it up all the places I wanted to be green. And like I said, it's mostly going to be green color, and it's going to be just building up that green as you go. I really love working with glazes because it kind of helps me keep the shadows where I want it to be and lighten up the places that should be brighter. I also work with a lot of zenithal priming, so it's basically what I'm doing that's helping those shadows stay dark and those light places stand out a little bit more. And that's why I like doing both at the same time, and it's usually what also other painters you see here on YouTube recommend as well. And like I said, it's just building up those layers and working with that wood elf kind of color scheme. I really love it because you kind of get to have fun and you get to experiment with different colors and different ways that you can mix your green colors. Here I decided to add a little bit purple to my greens so I can make a little bit more shadows. So all the places that I thought that I was gonna need a little bit more shadows, I just glazed those places in so it can just help that brighter spots stand out a little bit more. And that's why I really like working with this color scheme. Now afterwards my camera kind of ran out of battery and I didn't realize, and I kept on painting. I was really into the zone when I started to paint this. I really loved how it was coming out. Plus I really like working with bigger models. I know we have those 28 millimeters, but working with those 32 millimeters or above is pretty great because you get to experiment a little bit more. And honestly, if you want to get a little bit better at painting, try out those bigger models. Maybe not too big, but go, that middle ground. That way you can actually experiment with colors, how to mix some colors, how to add shadows, how to do a little bit more realistic. I know it's kind of daunting at first, but I mean, I've been painting for a while, and honestly, just working like that, it really helps. And after I painted everything, even my browns, this is how it looked like front and back. And honestly, this was the next day after all the paint was already dry and everything, and I added some of the little details afterwards. Like I said, my camera kind of died in between this painting, but when you get to work with those bigger models, I honestly feel like you have a little bit more leeway, you get a little bit more freedom, you get to kind of let yourself go a little bit, and it doesn't require you to be a high level painter to be able to paint this. Plus, once you get to those little tiny models like I have here in the back, it's going to be a little bit easier, and you kind of get to have a little bit more of an idea of how you want to paint. If you want to go for like a little bit more detailed painting than the tabletop standard. So honestly, I recommend you painting bigger models. That way you can just have a little bit more fun when you paint. And you can leave those tiny 28mm models, or maybe even the 32s for your tabletop standard. And you know, once you get or if you have a 3D printer, you can go ahead and 3D print a little bit bigger models, and you know, just have fun, relax, and start painting. And honestly, I also recommend you looking at other model ranges from other companies, or like I said, 3D printing, because you get to experiment a little bit more. You get to see more textures, you get to see different stuff other than what Games Workshop is giving out. But here I wanted to just paint wood elves, and since I still don't have a 3D printer, this is what I have in hand, and I wanted to try out I want to say a modern wood elf for Warhammer versus a classic wood elf, and I wanted to do the same paint scheme. And afterwards, like I said, it's just I love the painting side of it, and it's just I had so much fun painting this. And afterwards, when I was continuing my groove of painting, I started to work on what I considered the skin, and that is what I wanted to go for, that brown color. Usually on the classical wood elves, it would be their pouches, you know, something leathery. But here I wanted to be his skin slash bark, because this is like a wood creature. Therefore, I wanted to make it more seem like a wood. And like I said, I'm working with glazes. I am just glazing my way to higher shades. Sometimes I don't even change the color. I'm just using the same color, and I'm glazing multiple layers on top of each other, and that's making the same color stand out a little bit more. And then once I need a little bit more details, I add a little bit more white, or even a lighter shade of brown to it. And at the very end, I decided to just go a little bit more I guess artistical. I decided to add a little bit more yellow to my brown, so it can stand out a little bit more and get those little kind of wood kind of textures. So you're just, in the end, I was just stippling my way, and I was using one of my fancy brushes, and I was just stippling so I can get some of those colors stand out a little bit more. And of course, that would make it into highlights. I have learned that once you get into those bigger models and you want to paint in a higher level, you kind of use less dry brushing, because you want it to be detailed, you want it to be a little bit more personal. So that is why I decided to go the glazing route, and in the end it's just pure colors. It's because I wanted to have more control. I wanted to guide my paint to where I wanted to go, and that is where those dry brushing is not so detailed oriented. It's more a quick way to do it. But once you get to the nitty-gritty, it's better to just take your time. This painting took me about 2 days to finish, because since it is a bigger model, it does take a little bit more time, but also because, like I said, I wanted to have fun with it. I wanted to experiment. I wanted to paint a little bit more different than I'm used to. Finding ways to mix colors, and that's another thing. It's like, it doesn't matter what paint range you're using, you can experiment either way. If you like in these greens, like in these browns, that is set to add yellows, and it really works out great once you start kind of looking at it a different way. And once everything is dry and everything goes into that matte color, in the end, it really looks amazing. And in the very end, you look at it and you're very proud of what you did. So afterwards, I wanted to do gold. Now, gold is not something I'm not very good at. I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to figure out my non-metal metal color formula, but I'm going to get there. For now, I tried to go for like a dark red purple color. I mixed one of my burnt ochre that I had and some deep purple from, of course, my scale color range. the artist range, and I decided to make that into the darkest possible. I could have just gone for like a brown color, it's what I've seen other people use, but I wanted to add my own little spin to it. So what I did is, like, every little thing that looks like a branch, I decided that was going to be my outline for the gold, and I wanted to just base all of that with this dark color. That way when I start adding my yellows, my ochres, it's going to be going from darker to brighter and brighter colors. And in the end I thought it looked great, but like I said, it's just an experimenting. I'm still trying to figure out how this is gonna go. If you like the way it looked in the end, maybe you can go ahead and try it out. But yeah, like I said, I started off with a very dark color of a very dark red and purple, and then I went with this yellow ochre. And like I said, I'm still working with my glazes because it gives me a little bit more control. It's not too thin, it is thin. Also, this colors, the scale color artist range, it's kind of like the chimera colors. They're like very thick, so when you put them in your palette, I honestly don't even put a lot. I just put very little, and even when I put my glazing product on it, it still comes out very thick. So I need to be very careful. I need to be wiping out all those excess color on my tissue paper that I have on the side that you can see there, and that way I can have a lot of control. But I like the fact that it's thick because it gives me a lot of control over my brush strokes, and it gives me a lot of control of where exactly I want my paint to go. And I start building up those glazes, going from that ochre to a brighter yellow to even more brighter yellow. It's starting to come out pretty great because that purple base that I had made that ochre look a little bit darker. And like I said, if you ever paint with glazes, you know what the deal is. But I decided to do this all around, and I'm still trying to, like I said, figure out exactly how this is gonna go with my gold colors. In the end, I was very proud of it. But that's another reason why I also recommend for you to, you know, paint just for the heck of it, because you get to find a lot of stuff, you get to experiment a lot of stuff. And when you are doing smaller models, it's kind of complicated to have fun with it because there's a lot of little tiny pieces. It kind of becomes hard to figure out how is it that you want to do. Of course, there's a lot of very talented painters out there that can actually paint very small, and kudos to them. I wish I could be that great. I'm not there yet. But if you really want to just get better at painting, I honestly recommend for you to go a little bit bigger on the scale. That way you can just have a little bit more control, figure it out, and then once you kind of feel like you have mastered it, try it out on the smaller ones, and you'll see how much that changes a lot in the way you paint and how actually you think about the way you paint. I've actually never thought about the fact that once you have a bigger model, you have a lot of more free way to experiment, to figure it out. Like this gold color that had a lot of space where I can just work on my glazes and actually figure out how to do that smooth transition that you see on those Instagram pictures. And it's pretty great at the fact that I can finally reach those smooth transitions with this bigger models. And in the end, I wanted to go for a very bright yellow, so I mixed a pastel yellow that comes in the kit, and I mixed it up with just a yellow color, and it made it into a little bit more brighter. And that way, I'm thinking about where my light source is coming in, and where I think all those shine of the light is going to be making that gold shine a little bit more. So I was just hitting all those areas where I thought it was going to be shinier, and of course, I'm thinking in the way the light source comes from, and I'm just painting those areas where it should go. And like I said, since it's a bigger model, you get to have a little bit more fun. You get to see a little bit more of what you're doing. And also, I recommend for you to, when you have bigger models or when you have even smaller models, honestly, if you batch paint, it makes your life way easier, because like here, I took off some of his arms. And my Kurnoth hunter, he has his arms magnetized, so I can just pull him up and pull him back in. and it gives you a little bit more freedom to see under the arm, and you get to work a little bit better. And honestly, if you have the time and if you have the patience to do it, either magnetize or just batch paint, and then afterwards just build it up when it's all colored. Because honestly, I've seen a lot of videos where people do the batch painting or do the parts painting and stuff, and honestly, I see why they do it. It really works. And at the very end, I was just going to paint his little bow. I wasn't gonna go anything crazy with it. It was just going to be some browns on it, and then in the end ended up with a gray color. That way it could look very wood-like. And as for the rest, I painted it off camera because it was only the little cracks had to be done. All I did, it was just a little bit of purple and then pink in the end to make it that little glowing color. And honestly, it came out pretty great. At the very end, I will honestly say that if you really wanted to try experiment a little bit more, go for bigger model sizes. That way you can just have a little bit more leeway, as I said. And also, look at your surroundings and get inspired by books, films, and everything. Just don't be afraid to experiment with a lot of stuff, with a lot of colors. Don't be afraid to mix and match colors. And honestly, at the very end, just have fun with it. There's no rules to how you should paint. My model here came out great. Like I said, I got heavily inspired by the Wood Elves, and I will try to replicate this paint scheme with the new Wood Elf that came out with the Cursed City, Kurnoth, I believe her name is. And I will be painting her with almost the exact same paint scheme, just to see how it would look in a classical model. And like I said, there's no rules as to how you should paint. You should just have fun. Don't be afraid to experiment. And I've painted before some of my other sylvaneth line, and I'm also pretty proud of them. And I've always liked to have fun. None of my army looks, all of my armies, they don't have the same paint scheme, because when I paint, I just want to paint to make them personalized. And that's what I like about this hobby, is that you can just personalize all of them. And like I said, bigger models, that's what I would recommend for you to do. Don't, not just Games Workshop, honestly, just experiment with other brands as well. For my next video, I will be go ahead and painting Kurnoth, like I said. So hopefully you can wait for that, and hopefully you like this video and subscribe to my channel. And just honestly, thanks for the support, and thanks for watching.